Hello Facebook, hello YouTube. What's up everybody? This is Ruben and I'm back with another Ruben Report. And today's video is going to be the promised video that I spoke about, talking about why it's so important to have upgraded lighting on your RX3, or really any motorcycle for that matter. This can apply not just for the CSC line of motorcycles, but any bike in general. If you're going to be riding at night, you need to make sure that your headlight, or if applicable, if you can put some auxiliary lights on there, depending on the type of night riding that you're going to be doing, it's definitely going to be very beneficial. So I kind of covered this topic before in an older post, but I just wanted to go over it because I've seen quite a few folks within the CSC motorcycle owners group, or the CSC RX3, RX4, and RX6 motorcycle owners groups, have had questions about LED light or headlight bulb upgrades, or even auxiliary light upgrades for their bikes. And so I'm going to show you with my bike the difference that it makes when in comparison with the upgraded LED light bulb and the floodlights that I have on this bike. And so let me go ahead and get on here. All right, so I'm going to turn the camera light off for a moment. Okay, so now that I have the camera light off, right now I just have the bike on, and with the bike on and with the low beam, you guys can see how far the low beam projects itself. Okay, not very far. It's sort of wide, but it doesn't go very far. And right in front of the bike, that's kind of how it projects itself, but it's not really illuminating things very deeply. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and flip my high beam on. Right now you can see it goes all the way to the end of the driveway. Okay, I mean even beyond it. Okay, now I'm going to add my auxiliary lights, this switch. Okay, oh, that was just a flood. All right, so now you can see with the auxiliary lights, it is very well lit up, lots of space. I can see everything around me. I'm going to turn off the high beam. I'm going to go back to low beam. And even with the floodlights still on, it projects itself quite far. Now, I'm also going to give you guys a view of the front of the bike, because one thing you have to be careful of when, riding with these LED light bulbs and just riding in general at night with your motorcycle, you also have to be quite courteous of other drivers. So this camera really doesn't do it justice, but right now that's just the low beam. Hold on, maybe I can turn on my camera light on my phone. Maybe that'll help. Okay, I don't know if that helped any, but anyway, that's the low beam that's on right now with the LED. It's quite bright. I'm going to put on the high beam. Okay, let's see, high beam on. All right, we're going to go back to the front and we're going to see. All right. Again, it really doesn't do it much justice, but it is quite brighter. Okay, and then now we're going to put on our floodlights. Okay. Oh man, and that is beaming like the sun. Okay, so I'm doing this just to illustrate to you guys, when riding your bike at night, be courteous and cautious of oncoming traffic. Generally, especially with the footage that I'm gonna hopefully get tonight. We'll see how the night riding footage is gonna be, but hopefully I can convey, you know, with real-time riding, how the different lights affect the overall riding. And but you'll see as I ride, if I'm coming onto oncoming traffic, I tend to turn off my auxiliary lights because I know that they're blinding. And I also tend to sometimes switch off the high beam. It just depends on the situation. So we're gonna get to some ride along footage. I'm gonna go ahead and get ready to go here, and I'll bring you guys along with me on my night ride. Okay. Alright guys, starting off here when it comes to this particular clip, we're going to be starting with riding in the inner city. We're going to be showcasing quite a few different scenarios tonight, but I wanted to show you how the headlights would perform in an area that's already quite well lit, where there's a lot of street lights around. They're also going to go into sections where it's more neighborhoods, where there's still street lighting available, but not as much. And then we're going to go to a section where we're going to be reaching the back roads, where there's hardly any lighting available at all. Most likely it's going to be pitch black out there, nothing but darkness, no street lights anywhere. And yeah, and I'll be able to use my different lights, the low beam, the high beam, and the auxiliary lights, and you guys get to see how those lights perform in those different scenarios. But starting with the inner city riding, generally speaking, especially when it comes to areas where it's already very well lit, I generally only ride with the low beam on if I'm in an area where it's already very densely populated with lots of street lights. When I'm in areas such as this that I'm in right now, neighborhoods type of area where there's still street lights, but they're just not as plentiful, I'll go ahead and switch the high beams on. This allows me to see quite a bit far ahead of me, so that way I can keep an eye out on road hazards a lot better. Whereas if I was in an area where it was already pretty densely populated with street lights, it's already the street's already pretty well lit, low beams would have been sufficient enough to potentially see road hazards in front of me. And later on we'll get to see what it's going to look like using my different lights, the auxiliary lights and such, as I said before, on the back roads once we reach that section. But besides all of that, I also wanted to give you guys my top 4 tips on how to stay safe while riding during nighttime. My very first tip for you guys is to clean your helmet visor. Okay? When riding during the daytime, that little bug splatter or I don't know, smudge that's on your visor doesn't really affect you much. Again, during the daytime, because the sun's out, you're not really having much light shining directly into your face. Everything's very well lit up. It doesn't really affect you much. But riding at night, okay, that little smudge on your visor is basically going to be a blinding spot when it comes to you riding at night. Because once you're starting to ride into traffic and having incoming traffic shining their lights at you, that's going to cause a lot of glare in your face. okay, when light starts to hit that smudge. So that's my first tip is for you to clean your visor, make it squeaky clean, okay, so that way you can see very clearly out of your visor. Second will be to wear high visibility clothes, gear, and possibly even put some high visibility like stickers, reflective stickers and things of that nature on your bike as well. The RX3 already has a couple reflective components on it, on the wheels and on the boxes and things of that nature, so there's already some there. But my bike, it's not really helping that I got the black model RX3, and with having the black model RX3, yeah, it's not as easy to see me during the nighttime. But regardless whether I'm riding during the day or night, I'm always wearing my high vis yellow jacket. And riding with that high vis yellow jacket, it's just that extra precaution to help other drivers see me from certain angles. I know if they were to see me coming straight on, I mean, you can't ignore me, my lights are pretty bright, but from the side, it's still helpful to be able to see me coming. I want to be seen so that way I can stay safe from other drivers surrounding me, okay? My third recommendation is for you to know your route, okay? If you're riding in the nighttime, I wouldn't really recommend you ride at nighttime in areas that are unknown to you, okay? If you're riding at night, or the route that I'm taking right now, I ride this route every day. You guys have seen this route I don't know how many times. This is the route that I take to work all the time. So I know this route like the back of my hand, because I do it every day. I know every pothole, I know every rut, I know every ditch, I know all the sections where I might even see roadkill and certain debris in the road. And knowing your route, you're already prepared and already plan ahead for those certain sections where you would typically expect to have to see road debris, right? You don't have to, you should always be very vigilant and focus on what's in front of you, and ensuring that you have sufficient lighting to be able to see those hazards quite ahead of time. And we'll get to see on those back roads where it's very dark out how beneficial it is to have that type of lighting. But still, me knowing the area already, I already know certain avenues and certain positions within the lane to take to avoid known road hazards already, right? So that is tip number 3. And my last tip is to slow down, okay? Especially if you tip number 3 is something that you're not following. If you're going in an area where you don't know what's going on, ride slow. Slow down, okay? Riding fast at night is definitely not helpful. It's all about being mindful of road hazards. Other drivers as well, I mean, it's a factor, but being on a motorcycle, riding at night, it's mainly about seeing what's on the ground and being able to react quick enough. And so help yourself by riding at a slower pace so you have more time to potentially react to a certain road hazard if you come across one. And usually when I ride in this back road, you guys already know I ride at 7,000 RPMs, 60 miles an hour, indicated. But as I'm riding right now, I've started to slow down. I'm riding generally at 55 miles an hour indicated. I'd slow down by about 5 miles an hour indicated. So instead of going 55 miles an hour GPS, I'm going 50 miles an hour GPS. Because even though I know this route like the back of my hand, and even though I've been down these back roads so many times, I slow down because there's always, if I come across something that is unknown, because I know that it's very likely to see like roadkill or debris, or there just could be something that is an anomaly, really, just come completely out of left field. I'm riding at a much slower pace, so that way I have enough reaction time. But here we are. That is all of my top 4 tips for riding at nighttime to keep yourself safe. And now we are on the back roads, and you guys get to see in real time the different lighting setups that I'm going to be having. I actually filmed this with 2 different views. We're starting with the chest mount view, and hopefully the camera picked up, which I believe it did. It did a pretty good job of picking up what you would generally see with the naked eye. But later on I switched to my helmet mount, just so you guys can get a different perspective on how the lighting looks in front of the bike, and how the light lights up the road. Alright guys, so I went ahead and cut to this section of the video where it is quite dark out, and in this section I showcase where I toggle between the different lighting modes that I have on my bike, so you guys can see in real time the difference between riding in this pitch black environment with your low beams versus having your high beams, and then also having the auxiliary lights. And to be completely honest with you, riding with just your high beams, it's quite good. It does a decent job at casting light directly in front of you. But when it comes to, again, in my particular area, when it comes to here in California, I don't necessarily have this particular issue. I haven't really come across it at all. But possibly in an area where you live, you might be in an area where deer or other type of wildlife might just run completely out of left field unexpectedly onto the road. And so it's not only about casting light directly in front of you. You want to flood the whole area with as much light as possible, so you can see what's on your right, you can see what's on your left. You can be very vigilant and mindful of any type of movement that might come your way, and you would want that light to be cast out pretty far as well, because again, riding on a motorcycle at night, you're really at a disadvantage because you have to dance basically around road hazards, and you have to give yourself as much time as possible to be able to react in such situations. So like I was stating before, with the top tips that I mentioned, know your route, ride slow, okay? Doing those 2 things is definitely going to help you, along with having the adequate lighting to help you have a better reaction time in the event that a certain situation may occur, where a road hazard will just suddenly appear, or a cat or a dog will just run out in the middle of the road out of nowhere, a deer. You'll just be better prepared to be able to handle that situation, to maneuver around that situation, and stay safe. Alright guys, here's a section of the video where I stopped for a moment to swap from the chest view to the on my the head mounted view, so that way you guys can get a different perspective. Hopefully seeing the area lit up from a more overhead view gives you a better perspective of how the light is actually cast onto the road. And right now I am in one of those like town areas. I'm toggling in between my low beam and high beam again, so you guys can see how far that's actually being cast. And then later on we're going to be switching right back to our high beam and toggling those floodlights, so you guys can see how that affects the overall visibility. So this little section here, we're going to be seeing from an overhead view, all me switching through the different lighting modes on the bike, starting with the low beam, going back to the high beam, and again to see those floodlights once again. And hopefully from this perspective you can see how much of a difference having those extra auxiliary lights truly makes on your commute if you're riding in such areas where there's absolutely no street lights whatsoever. And also keep in mind, every time that I've been coming in contact or coming close to oncoming traffic, I've always been mindful to switch my auxiliary lights off. And I do this because my auxiliary lights, depending on, and this is something that's up for discussion, depending on how you want to set your auxiliary lights up. Like I was stating before, you might be in an area where you want to be a lot more mindful and have a lot more visibility to the areas that are to the left and to the right of you. Maybe you don't want to aim your auxiliary lights more in front of you. Maybe you want to put them towards the side. And my auxiliary lights, they're tilted to the sides to very slightly. Especially the one that's on the left. The one to the left is actually tilt more to the left, and the one that's on the right is tilted to the right, mainly because as I'm riding on the road, I'm farther away from the left side than I am from the right side. That's just my preference. The right side is more tilted towards the front of me, so that way it can aid my main headlight better, whereas the left light is tilted more towards the left because there's a lot more space to cover on the left side. That's just my logic, the way that I like to set things up. But maybe you want to set your lights up where you want them to be skewed a little bit more outwards, because you want to be a lot more mindful of wildlife that could be passing by. I mean, it's up to you guys how you want to set your lights up. But the main thing, whatever type of setup that you have, and I know the way that my lights are set up, I definitely have to be mindful of oncoming traffic, because I know that my left light is beaming in the direction of oncoming traffic. So I'm very mindful of turning it off when a car is coming and turning it back on once I actually need it. And as stated before, if you have the right LED bulb, or just a LED in general, God help you if you have an RX3 and have the standard bulb trying to ride on roads like this at night. It's not very helpful at all. But if you have a LED bulb, again, like I said before, the high beam does a decent job at lighting up the road, especially what's directly in front of you, and it casts itself pretty far. I would just be very mindful of what is on the sides, because those high beams, they tend to focus themselves quite narrow, but it does a very good job of showing you what's directly in front of you and casts itself very far. So if anything, get yourself a really good LED headlight for your RX3. If you're planning to get an RX3, or for any bike in general, whatever bike that you have, make sure that you have at least a really good LED headlight in your bike, so that way if you're riding in situations like this, you're going to have much better visibility and you'll be able to react to certain road hazards a lot easier. Yeah. Alright guys, that's pretty much it for tonight's video. If you guys have any ideas or feedback that you'd like to share, go ahead and leave it in the comments below and let me know. Do you have auxiliary lights on your bike? Do you have a LED lighting on your whatever bike it is that you have? Do you even do any type of night riding on your bike? Let me know in the comments below. Alright, as always, stay safe out there, guys, and peace.